Hi everybody, this is Neil from neilcollins.de, and in this video I'm going to talk about storytelling for business. And I'm going to tell you a story that happened to me when I was 21, a long time ago. When I was 21, I had just finished university and I got my first full-time job, and it was as a waiter in a very, very posh restaurant. And the first Saturday night in this new job, we'd finished and the manager had left, and some people there were staying, some people who worked there were staying to have a drink. And I thought, I'm going to be good. I'm going to go home and get an early night and get up early and do some sport. So I was walking towards the door, and I had my hand on the handle of the door to open the door. And one of the girls said, "Hey Neil, no, come over to the bar and have a drink with us." You know, the bar of the restaurant. And I thought, no, I'm going to go home. You know, I'm going to be good. So this girl ran over, stood, put her back to the door and leaned against the door. So I had to pull really hard to open the door, and I went, boom! And I basically, in this very posh restaurant, I pulled the handle off the door. So I was standing there in my new job in this restaurant with this big brass handle in my hand. I mean, can you imagine? What would you do? What would you do in that situation? It's your new job. So, you know, the other girl said to me, "Don't worry, Neil, we'll fix it." And she went off and came back and gave me a screwdriver. She gave me a screwdriver, and, you know, I fixed the handle back onto the door. And for the moment, everything was okay. And then this girl said, "Hey Neil, okay, come on, have a drink. Give me the screwdriver, sit down and have a drink." So as a joke, I thought this would be funny. I said, "Catch the screwdriver." But I didn't throw it. But this steel part basically came out of the plastic, flew across the room, over towards the bar. Now, in this very posh restaurant, there was, behind the bar, there were like glass shelves. There was a mirror at the back of the glass shelves, and there was lots of bottles of expensive wine and alcohol and whiskey on these shelves. And the steel part flew, getting faster and faster and faster, and it hit the glass shelves, and then for about 20 seconds, all you could hear was shh. It was like raining glass. It was like a domino effect. The first shelf broke, all the bottles fell onto the second shelf broke, all the bottles fell onto the final shelf broke. It was just raining glass, and everybody was like, what is happening? And I was standing there with this piece of plastic, basically a piece of plastic in my hand, thinking, this is my new job. 2 seconds ago I tried to leave, and now this is happening to me. So basically, of course, they called the boss. He had left 10 minutes before. He said, "Get Neil on the phone." So I went into the office and I said, "Hi," and he said, "Do you want to explain to me how you broke all the glass shelves behind the bar?" And I thought, yeah, I'm really sorry. I pretended to throw a screwdriver, and the steel part came out, flew across the room and hit the bar. And he said, "Oh really? And what were you doing with the screwdriver?" And I said, "I was fixing the handle on the door." And he said, "Okay, why were you fixing the handle on the door?" And I answered, "Because I pulled it off the door." And he said, "Okay, so basically, I left the restaurant 10 minutes ago, and in 10 minutes you broke the handle on the door and broke all the glass shelves behind the bar and all the bottles on it and the glass mirror." And ladies and gentlemen, my presentation will now be about why being good is not always the best solution. So that's my story. That would be a story that I would use, you know, for a presentation. Obviously, when I trust my audience will think, okay, he was 22 when he did this, it was his first job. And I'm talking about, you know, a disaster, a horrible situation that happened to me. So I'd like to tell you a little bit now about how I constructed this story. So first of all, I set the scene. So I basically told you I was like 21 and working in my first job as a waiter after university. So 21 and first job, waiter in a posh restaurant. Then I create drama. So the drama here is obviously the broken door handle and the broken shelves. And the third thing you can do is to involve the audience. So when I said to you, like, can you imagine, what would you do? So asking a question involves the audience, you know, it gets them to think about the situation actively. So what would you do, or a similar question to involve the audience. The next part is to establish credibility. Now in this story I jumped this part, but if you want to establish credibility, you know, you could say something, in this story I could say something like, you know, this was in 1997, it was in Edinburgh, it was very close to Edinburgh Castle, so you give some details to make your story a little bit more credible. So 1997 in Edinburgh. And then near the end of the story, you signal the end of the story. So in my story I said, so basically the boss called and asked me, would you like to explain what happened? And then deliver the punchline. The punchline of the story is basically like the highest point of the story, or like the climax of the story. It's normally a sentence which, you know, which has a very strong impact and, you know, finishes the story on a high. So in my story it would be where the boss said, so in 10 minutes you have broken the shelves and broken the door handle. And then, of course, you could just use the story like this in a small talk situation, or in a meeting, or if you know, in a lot of different situations. But if you did want to link it to a presentation, you would do that linking part at the end. So my link was, sometimes being good is not always the best option. I'll just write that there. Yeah, so I hope that you can use this structure. You can use this structure and create your own short stories, you know, about things which happen to you in your life. And you can use these stories in your presentations or in your small talk situations. And I hope, you know, I hope it's helpful for you, and I hope your stories, really rock, and your business colleagues and associates and partners will love listening to them and will be entertained by them and moved by them. And if you like the video, as always, please hit the like button, please share it with your friends and subscribe to the channel. And as always, thanks very much for watching the video.